Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next coffee and chat. I've got my coffee. I've actually remembered it today. It is tea, not coffee, but really great to see you all. We've got quite a large panel with us today, as you can see, just in no particular order, in the order that they're on my screen. I'd like to introduce you to Paul, Ben, Tim, Miranda, and Graham. They are all good friends of mine from various parts of the world. It's quite bizarre how eclectic my friendship group is becoming or has always been. And I know that they can give you quite a lot of advice and guidance in this particular space. What we wanted to talk about today is improving your CV and, of course, interviews in a virtual world. Unfortunately, it looks as though we're going to hit another recession. However, even without a recession, there's a whole host of people that decide to change jobs on a routine basis. But it is a very different world at the moment, and I think that this is an important area to discuss. As always, if you've got any questions, please do put them in at any stage. Becky will then feed them through to us. Please use the chat function as much as you can. That gives us the opportunity to see you. We're only going to be talking for half an hour. We are recording, as always, this conversation, so it will be on our webpage, as all of the others are at some stage. So I'm going to start my very first question, and indeed my first chat, with my very good friend Tim, who's all the way down on the coast, down on the west coast of the country. I had to think then for a very, very short moment. And my first question, I guess, is about figuring out what you want. I'm going to start by saying I use a book for this, and I often advise people to use it, which is What Colour is My Parachute? I can't see my own picture today, so I'm assuming that that's in there. But it's a really good way of figuring out what you want. But I don't know about you, Tim. I've been in lots of discussions with people who've said that in their time on lockdown, they've started to realise that the job that they're doing isn't necessarily the job they want to do for the remainder of their life. And this has given them the perfect opportunity to rethink where they're going with their career and what they want it to look like. What's been your thoughts on that one?
I think it's a trait of many people, particularly ex-military, who, when they leave the military, are desperate to get a job, any job, and not necessarily something that they necessarily enjoy or want to do full time. And so, for them, the pressure is to find a job. And I think the same is the same for everybody. If you've got a mortgage, if you've got money worries, you want to bring money coming in, and therefore a job is what you tend to get. And very few people turn down work when they're offered it. They're so excited about being offered a job because they've gone through the interview process that they don't then turn around and say to themselves, is it what I really want? And so from my perspective, I think finding out what gets you excited, what really gets you motivated, what gets you up in the morning is probably more important than finding a job. And I guess if there's one thing we've all done in lockdown, and me included, is to have a long, hard look about what we're actually doing and whether or not that's something that floats your boat or whether it's just something you're doing because you have to.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's that next stage as well. So it's figuring out what I need to do, not just what I want to do. You know, there are certain needs. I need a certain income. I might need to live in a certain area in the country because that helps me with childcare. What do I like to do? And then what does my CV say in skills and experience? Because if I don't have the right skills and experience and I can't get those on my CV, and we'll come back to this later, then frankly, it's very difficult to actually go for that job. Are you seeing something like that, Miranda?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree in the sense that so I work a lot in the pharmaceutical industry, and often we get a lot of people who would love to work in the pharmaceutical industry because it's a great industry to work in, and also really interesting. The problem that some people will find is that they might have a lot of great experience in a specific area, be that project management or something like that, but they won't have experience in GMP or whatever it might be, which is manufacturing processes. And it's just a no-go. There's no opportunity really in those kind of level of roles that they'll get in. So they will then go away and have to do a course or get experience some other way. And then that gives them an opportunity to look at getting the job that they really would like in the future.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Ben, but I've seen a lot of people actually saying, I now am determined that I'm going to reduce my number of working days. I want to have a job that works more in this way or that way. You know, they've taken this time to actually reconsider what what floats their boat, as Tim said. You know, what's the thing that really excites them and makes them want to get out of bed? Again, adopting Tim's phrase. Have you seen similar?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a trend, particularly over probably the last sort of 3 to 4 years. I've particularly seen candidates looking for more and more flexibility, whether that's around hours or whether that's around being able to do the school run and then go into work and potentially do an hour from home. But I think, as you touched on, particularly since lockdown, I think that's just accelerated 4 times over. And I think it's really, I think probably the biggest level of flexibility is certainly those hours and that ability to able to do the school run or be able to work from home 1 day a week or something around that. And I think that actually we've seen a lot of employers lose out on candidates, not as a result of money, but as a result of that flexibility.
Yeah, it's funny though, isn't it? Because I found a lot, and I mean a huge lot, since I've been, working remotely. My hours have expanded, not diminished. I mean, people seem to think it's perfectly acceptable to give me to put me on a meeting at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening because, hey, you're working at home, so it's not a problem. You know, I seem to be starting earlier and earlier and ending later and later. So my work-life balance is worse, and that would say something, as Tim will vouch for, I'm sure, is worse than it ever was previously because I'm now omni available because obviously I live here. So what's the problem? So I'm tied completely to this computer. And I read somebody's conversation yesterday that was she was talking about a daughter, and she said that the pandemic had made her daughter rethink about the fact that she didn't want to be tied to a computer, and actually she wanted to work with animals. She wants to go and be a veterinary nurse. Well, that's quite a big jump. I'm going to be she's a designer at the moment, so she's obviously on her computer at all. She doesn't want to do that anymore. She wants to go work with animals, but it's given her that time to really consider what she wants. How about you, Graham? What are you seeing?
Very similar to Ben's experience there. I think if it means that we end up spending a lot less time in the car, we can be a lot more productive for a lot longer as well. I think gone will be the days of jumping in the train for a long journey or jumping in the plane to go to Scotland for a day for one meeting. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think it will engage companies on a much more local and regional level, which I think will be great, and that'll be a great way for stimulating local economies again. So I'm all for that.
I have to laugh at Graham because we've had a lot. I've been working in the Middle East for the last few years, and we've had a lot of visitors from the UAE on this chat on a routine basis. So I'm sure I'm speaking far too fast for them at the moment, so they'll be telling me off. But I'm sure that also makes a big difference. We have embraced all of a sudden Zoom, Teams, and all the rest. I don't know about you guys, but I'm struggling to remember which focus I'm on today. Is it Zoom? Is it GoTo? Is it, and how do I fiddle with that? How do I do that? And I've seen a lot of children in particular. I was giving a briefing to a bunch of scouts, don't ask me, who are completely digitally native, who really understand this space, who instantly used hands up, etc. Whereas we've still got all these people struggling to, the number of times you hear people say you're on mute, I can't hear you, in the middle of team meetings. So I think that digital piece, maybe that's another area we need to upskill. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. I think the new normal, as it's going to be, the buzzword out there is a lot of companies and the demographics going to diversify massively. My son's 11 years old and he's on Google Hangouts. He's doing his homeschooling. They're flipping the classroom massively, which I totally love. But the technology is going to be a key player. It's going to reduce, that travel time. You can still engage with your workforce online. You can still do your training delivery online. Cut down on the travel time. Work longer hours. I think that is going to be the way forward. And a lot of companies already are embracing that. And as I'm going through the recruitment process and job hunting myself, it's been a real key player, and you can express yourself a lot more, I think, especially in the interview process. Technology, I think, is going to be the way ahead and the new normal for every single sector.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that Again, a conversation today, somebody was saying to me that they were incredibly stressed on the Zoom call that they were in today, more stressed than they'd been for the last 2-3 years when they were first interviewing, because for the first time they were being asked to address the whole business rather than just the subsection that they'd normally have interviews with. And this individual found that very stressful. So, you know, what works for me isn't going to work for everybody else. And we've talked a lot about stress before on these particular chats. But I think that that's also a concern maybe you need to, that people need to consider. Is it what's going to work for you? Let's move our conversation on a little bit. I want to talk really about CV, social media presence, those types of things. I mean, I've always been a big believer in the fact that the CV is very much built for the job that you're applying for, that don't have one that's just sat there and you don't touch it. I also am a big believer in social media, and frankly, if you're listening in and you want to see how social media is done well, then follow Paul Hudson, who has frankly, but bells and whistles as far as I'm concerned, Paul. But are you seeing a difference in that with regards to well, let's talk it from a potential candidate, Paul. Let's talk it from your perspective first. Have you really, I know you've embraced this, but have you found that others have followed you in that embrace?
Yeah, I mean, massively. You know, I come back from the Middle East with BAE, was on the last plane, and then I ended up working with Asda, just helping out with COVID. I had over 800,000 views of that picture of me in my Asda uniform. Then employers from every sector went, you're the kind of person that we want working for us. And then, as you can see on my social media this week on my LinkedIn, I've got Killing Eve Week. So I use my own personal brand. That really engages with the audience. And I've got nearly 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. But I can then really engage with the companies that I really want to work for. And if I express my tenacity and I'm driven and I'm passionate, like you say, your CV is not one size fits all. You've got to tailor it, you've got to tweak it for every single role you're going for. You've got to personally brand yourself. So I think social media has really helped me engage with my audience, but also to future employers to say, look, this is what I can deliver for you and I'll go the extra mile. And I'm not going to stop until I get there.
So the best before lockdown, the best example I'd ever seen of this was a young man, who knows whether it was actually a rumor and didn't really happen, a young man who chose to send a shoe to a potential employer because he wanted a foot in the door. And I thought that was so canny, such a simple thing. And he said that when you interview me, I'll bring you the other shoe. And I thought, oh, I love it, because it was a good quality pair of shoes. It's the type of thing that would get you an interview, just so that get the other pair of shoes. And he'd done some homework, so he'd figured out what size feet they had. I don't know how he did that, but talk about a clever way of doing it. Now, you're working in a very different way, Paul, but it's on my feed all the time. I can't ignore you. I know you're there, and I know that other people are hitting what you're doing as well.
Also,
Tim, I know you.
Sorry. Also, I think it's not being afraid of being knocked back. You've got to be resilient. You've got to take it on the chin, keep on moving forward. That's why I always put that hashtag, keep smiling, keep moving forward. Because during this time, there's thousands of redundancies at the moment. We see it every day on the news with companies and business sectors going through the mill, from cruise line industry to the building sector. So you're not just applying for one role. There's thousands of people now applying for that job, which I think obviously for you guys in the recruitment industry must be an absolute nightmare, using ATS for your CVs. Nobody reads a CV anymore. You've got to use social media as your CV.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, you wrote a whole book on this. As far as I'm concerned, the best book that's ever been on LinkedIn, but I can't find it on Amazon any longer. I don't know why not, because it's absolutely brilliant, which talks about how to use your social media in this way. Do you find that when you're talking to people, this is what they're not very good at? They're being too British almost?
I've always said to people that how much money would you be willing to pay to get yourself a job for, say, £50,000 a year? And people look at you in astonishment and say, what do you mean, what am I prepared to pay? I said, well, how much are you prepared to invest in yourself? How much are you prepared to market yourself to get that particular job, to make you stand out? How much time and effort are you prepared to put in? And most people never think about it like that. They just think, well, I've got a CV and I've got a covering letter and that's all I need. And I said, well, that's you along with your 10,000 other people. What's going to make you stand out? How are you going to do things differently? And like Paul said, I mean, the best story I ever heard that was when a chap was desperate for an interview with somebody, with a big senior manager, could never get hold of him, and phoned up his PA, got hold of the number of his PA, and said, look, well, how can I meet this person? They said he's got half an hour in his diary when he's traveling from his house to Heathrow Airport tomorrow morning. And he said, and he hired a very posh car with a chauffeur, and said, I'll pick him up at 6:30 and I'll have that half an hour in the car with him while he's driving to the airport. And he got the contract and he got the job that he wanted. And that's what you've got to think about sometimes, is what can you do completely differently off the cuff, perhaps, that puts you in front of the right people. Don't just think of the obvious stuff.
And it's that being not too British, isn't it? Because, you know, for whatever reason, we as a psyche go, oh, I can't possibly reach out to people. I can't possibly do that. I can't network. You know, that's just not what I'm about.
What's the worst thing that can happen? They can just turn around and say no, at which point you say thanks very much and move on to the next person.
Yeah,
you mustn't take things personally.
I watch Dragons Den, and the Dragons will invest in something that they remember. You know, something that's going to be in their mind, that USP. You've got to use that analogy. That's the way I use it when I approach an interview is, I want you to remember me. You may have interviewed 50 people today, but I want you to remember me. Whether I'm the first, the middle, or the end, I want you to remember Paul Hudson when I walk out that door. And that's the way you've got to approach it.
So I'm getting a question in from Mark that's saying that what's great about Paul's posts, and he only knows you through me, Paul, so it's my fault that he's following you, is that it's really good at, you're really good at giving a reality check and embracing the knockbacks. So there aren't that many times where you go negative. You know, occasionally you do have I've had enough day, which is quite reasonable. It's much easier, therefore, to engage with you because, you know, you're upbeat and positive in this space. Is that what your feedback you're getting from others?
Yeah, I'm getting amazing comments on my LinkedIn, and if this job doesn't go, you don't get the job, then reach out to us. You know, I've seen BT today advertise a L&D manager role in London, but then as soon as I looked on the applicants, it's just through the roof. So I go straight to the hiring manager. I go straight to the people that are posting it. We go through all this online applications, which some platforms are absolutely ridiculous. You know, you go through your psychometric testing, you go, yeah, okay, I'm Insight Yellow, DISC profiles, and then you go through to the hiring manager that doesn't even know about the job. Then you just want to talk to the person that you're going to be working with in the team. But then, yeah, we have wobbles. I've had a wobble the other week, and I'm quite happy to put it on my LinkedIn. It's okay not to be okay, etc. It's a roller coaster ride, and you've got to, you know, I'm ex-military. I keep that military mindset. I'm deployed for 9 months at a time. You pack your bag and you're off. You know, we're all the same, but it's how you cope with it and keep on moving on. So
but it's partly that resilience, isn't it? It's partly that resilience. In fact, just for anybody out there that's listening from the ex-MOD community, King's are just starting a new research project, University of King's, that is, or King's University. I can never remember which way around, probably the latter. Looking at resilience and how whether people that are ex-forces are proving to be more resilient in this space than others. So I'm going to move to a couple of people who I know are not ex-forces and exactly the same question. Do you think that the social media part, the CV part is important, Miranda?
Absolutely. I really enjoyed listening to you actually, Paul. I think it's yeah, you've got some really interesting thoughts and I totally agree. Particularly with the posting on the knockbacks as well. I think it allows, or using social media at least, allows people to get to know you as a person, to stand out. Resilience is important in whatever walk of life, right? So if you can kind of show that you're resilient in that way, then you're going to be resilient in a job when you hit XYZ setback there. So I think that's really nice. And it's all about just going the extra mile, as you say. So, you know, if you really want the job, there are 1,000 other people that do. What else can you do? Be that, yeah, as you say, talking to the hiring manager directly. Can you call through a number and ask to speak to them just to say, oh, I've sent my application, would really appreciate it if you have a look. All of that sort of thing just makes you stand up and stand out rather, and yeah, against a lot of other people, it can really make your application stand out.
Yeah. How about yourself, Ben? What do you think?
I think really great points have been made already, which I'd very much mirror. I think that the one thing I would say from a recruiter's point of view, I view an average of 200 CVs a day, so do my team, and I think that one of the biggest almost separators that I see is the CVs that are to the point and a fact very quickly. I think that of the 200 CVs, 100 of them are enthusiastic, 100 of them are hardworking, 100 of them are committed. And I think that actually, if we're looking at a sales CV, the sales CV who says, my target was this, I hit this, the average was this, I would like to apply for this job. These are my clients. I think often are the ones that combined with all the great things that we've touched on. So following up the personality, I think that's probably, in my industry, the biggest single thing that separates the CVs, where you can very quickly see they're suitable for the role and this is why they're good.
Yeah. And Graham, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's said so far. I think one little gift, I think, to leave people with, if you think of how an employer views a CV, an employer will bring you in for one of four reasons. Either you've made money in your previous role, you've saved money in your previous role, you've saved time in your previous role, or you've led a team to do one or more of those. And what I see very often is CVs will talk about, they think they're talking about achievements, but they talk about responsibilities. And it's way off the mark. An achievement is not just what you think is important, but it targets one of those four things. And if you can answer so what after an achievement, it's not an achievement. And that's what the employer will do. If you think of an employer as being massively selfish, then and just put your employer's shoes on when you're putting those points together, then you'll get somewhere close. But that in my experience, 99% of CVs I look at aren't even close. They're nicely presented, they have a lot of responsibilities, but the achievements that they put down absolutely won't land with an employer.
So I'm often asked about qualifications, and we deliver project management training, as you all know, and they always ask me which project management qualification should I undertake, and my answer is always, I don't know why you're asking me. Go and look at something like monster.co.uk that has all of the jobs in it, and put Prince2 in the top right hand corner and see what types of jobs come up, and if that's the type of job you want, that's the qualification you want. Equally do the same for APM and Agile, and make the choice according to what the data is that's coming in. I can train you in all three things, but actually what you need is what they're asking for, not what I think is important, what they think is important. And that often seems to be a surprise to people, because I know as a recruiter, and a long time I was a recruiter, a long time ago I was a recruiter, when we didn't have IT and AI to sort CVs, we still had admin clerks who would literally look up through the CV and take people's CV out if they didn't have that qualification that we were saying was mandatory. So I think that does matter, and I'm not sure why people still insist that it doesn't. I'm going to move to our last particular question, and that's really about virtual interviews. Now, Paul has done more virtual interviews, not because he's not a brilliant candidate, because he is, than most people that I know. So I'm going to start by asking him, well, what's the format, Paul? Is it terrifying? Are you able to, prep for it far better? I think you need to prep for an interview. I think that's a big disadvantage. I see candidates who, when I say to them, why do you want to work for Explosive Learning Solutions or ELS? They go, and they haven't actually even looked at our webpage or know what we do. And I'm like, well, sorry, but where's the commitment to me as a company? What do you think with regards to this virtual interview? Very different?
No, I approach it exactly the same as what I would do in a office environment or go into the company in through the door. I'd approach it exactly the same. Always do your research. Look at who all the key players are, all the key stakeholders are within that business. Always dress to impress, as you would normally. Look at their culture, their vision, their values. For me, they are the three key things, because they want to make sure that you are going to fit into their business, hit the ground running, but also you're going to be able to be embedded within the team or even lead the team going forward. Look at their 2020 vision, which is now out the window, but I look at their long-term strategy, because any good leadership should be looking at the long term, is see where their journey is heading, and because you want to be part of that or even leading them to get there. So I do all of the detail. But then I think with the virtual interview, you can be a lot more comfortable. I think you can relax, you can engage and talk more, you can get yourself across a little bit easier, because I think in a one-to-one in an office environment, sometimes it's just those random questions that they've got. Why do you want to work for us, etc. What can you bring to the table? You can have the room posted, you know, with all the information that you need. You can have your cheat kits everywhere, so that you really know the company. We all do it, but I think it's the time that you can really get your personality across. So I find virtual ones a lot easier. It's like a telephone interview. You can stand there and really express yourself. But I approach it in exactly the same way, other than decorating the office with the details on them. So I'll find out who the CEO is and all the key players, you know. But I really enjoy it, and it's not being putting yourself under pressure, I think, is the key thing. Is just relax. And any great employer anyway should make you feel at ease. It shouldn't be these questions that, what would you do if you was in a plane full of, you know, Smarties? What's all that about? You know, so you get questions like that.
Tim, I think you've got something to add.
Yeah, I just think people forget that throughout this whole interview process or this job hunting process, if you get an interview, you effectively, your CV has, your employer or your potential employer has looked at your CV and said, I think you've got the skills and competence to do the job. So having got the CV, having got when you're at the interview, it's all about, as Paul said, culture and fit. It's nothing more. I think they might ask you a few questions, you say on your CV, you've done this and done that. But the truth of the matter is that if you've got to the interview, they probably worked out you can do the job. It's then all about culture and fit on both parties, by the way, not just the employer side, the potential employee too, as Paul said. And I think people forget that. If you've got to the interview, it's all about culture and fit. So is the guy who's interviewing you, does he play golf or she play golf? Do they play tennis? Do they do this? Do they do? Find out what they do. Because if I've got two golfers in front of me interviewing me, I'm going to mention the fact that I play at Royal Winchester Golf Club, or where I'm playing, I play off 8 in my teammate, my 92nd teammate. And the first thing they're going to say is, oh, I played there before. It's a great course, isn't it? And suddenly you're off track and they're just talking about golf. They're not talking about the job at all. All they're talking about is culture and fit. And people forget that. You've got to make that personal connection. Find out the person who's in front of you.
Now, you see, I'm going to interject because we've had somebody else come in, and I'm going to put this at Miranda as the person that is the youngest person in this room, who's saying culture and fit, you're too old.
As in the candidate's too old?
I don't know. Maybe
probably.
The comment's too old.
Well, I think if you have a comment like that, then you're probably not too old because you've got a good sense of humour. So long as you can, it certainly shouldn't be about age. But it's exactly as Tim and Paul were saying, still about culture and fit. And if you've got the same alignment in terms of culture and your interest and your personality, I guess, then age shouldn't really come into it. And this is a good opportunity for you to, as you say, find some common ground and work on that, regardless of whether you're 20 years apart or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's my answer to that one.
Yeah,
love it.
Age should not come into it. It should be a matter of what you bring to the table. You can be embedded into the company. You can hit the ground running. You've all got the same vision and values. I think they are absolutely key. It shouldn't matter. And like what Tim said, I do it exactly straight away. Is I find out who's going to be talking to me, find out what they do outside of work. I think is a great thing. A lot of people don't put hobbies on their CV, which I think is wrong, because that shows what you like to do outside of your working environment. I think you should put that on there, whether you like cooking, rugby, football, or you play five-a-side, whatever. I think that should be on your CV because it shows what you do and what your personality is. So Tim's exactly right, is you find that common ground when you're having that interview. You can drop little things in and, I love to cook. I heard you like cooking Italian. Straight away then you're taking them off on a tangent. It eases the conversation.
It's that conversation, isn't it? Look, guys, we've been going for half an hour. We always promise we'll stop at 30 minutes on these coffee and chats. I've got a feeling that there will be additional questions coming in. Please, if you're listening in and you've got any questions for any of our panelists, if you just drop those in to us at ELS, and we'll make sure that we get an answer from the panelists. Next week, we're going to be talking to just one panelist and joined by our local MP, David Johnson. The theme is to look at the 7th, I wasn't aware that there'd been 6 more, but okay, the 7th International Women in Engineering Day. And we're joined by Sally, who's one of the local female engineers or women engineers in this area, who's got some exciting news to tell us. And I'm hoping that we'll also have some comments from David Johnson with regards to how the government are going to realise some of the benefits that we've had in engineering after COVID, which I think is an important area. Really good to see the 5 of you. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Really good to see you from Scotland down to the West Coast in Oxford and at Oxfordshire, and indeed in the north of England. I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you so much. You've been really valuable. Good to see everybody. Hope you have a good Friday. Speak to you next week. Bye.
See you on LinkedIn.
Bye.